one day, and this is Mr. Clark back with our final segment, Senior Seminar, where we talk about not sex, not race, not religion, but we do it in an analytical way, and we kind of don't bring up too many details, and we leave it up to you to Google yourselves so we don't get in trouble. So, with that being said, this week, it's not actually even a dangerous topic. The topic this week was autism. I'm not necessarily sure why, but autism has been a topic of discussion, and I feel like it's been coming up to me recently in abundance. So I decided that I wanted to talk about an article I actually pulled up from The Economist. Beautiful Minds Wasted, How Not to Squander the Potential of Autistic People. So before we could talk about autism, we have to tell you guys what autism is, right? So autism is actually, sorry, let me find the part in the article. Autism, general terms for a group of complex disorders of brain development. These disorders are characterized in degrees by difficulties in social interaction, verbal and nonverbal communication, and repetitive behaviors. So, children or adults who are considered autistic have certain social disabilities, as well as verbal and nonverbal communication issues, and they prefer to stick with repetitive tasks. So, in 1970, 1 in 14,000 people were diagnosed in America with autism. Now it's 1 in 68 children. So I thought this was a super huge article that I needed to bring up because there's a lot of people being affected and a lot more people being affected, and they're actually, to what I understand and what I've come into contact with, awesome supernatural people that we really need to not take for granted. They could really be this is me being like, ooh, conspiracy mind, but I really think people with autism might be the next rung in evolutionary development. It's just we haven't embraced it enough. Because if you look at some of the skills some of them have, I mean, if you look, I'm sorry, just some of the autistic people they decide to put in media. Like I saw this one guy, he can draw anything like out of 3 seconds worth of sight of it. He can do a whole skyline. It was another guy who was doing artistic drawings with grains of rice. So just so many, or the one who could look at data and find inconsistencies in the mathematics by looking at it, which was like amazing. So there's all type of amazing skills that they have, and they're being underutilized in the job market, and that's what this article was about. So now we have 1 in 68 people being diagnosed, and they're not being introduced into the workforce in a way that they should and could be utilized. So we're actually just putting them on disabilities. I believe the statistic was almost 90% of autistic children attend primary school, but only 1% make it out of high school, which is devastating. In Britain, only 12% of higher functioning autistic people actually find full-time work. Globally, the United Nations reckons that 80% of those with autism are not in the workforce. 80%. And we know how intelligent they are, and they're not working. And this affects the economy as well. So not only are we missing out on the significant contributions that they could be making to organizations such as in programming and software, where their ability to look at these mathematical components and understand them in a way that we just can't. Just by basic brain function, we can't analyze it in the same way they can, but they're not being used. And it actually causes effects to our GDP. So autism is seen as a disability, so it is covered through some federal health care, and that's seen to cause lag in the GDP, gross domestic product, by 2%. So we're actually spending 2% of our GDP to have them not work, opposed to spending some of that money into finding alternative or job placement opportunities for them. There was another part in the article that I really wanted to make sure I brought up, and that was it should be trading investment medical understanding improved 1994. So early diagnosis actually aids in the accrual of those social skills. So if you find that your child is focusing more on his toys than interactions with people, if they don't mind doing short, minute tasks over and over again, that is the time where you should be introducing them to a doctor so that they can be evaluated. And I don't mean to laugh, but it's just the way I was phrasing it. Have them evaluated. Now, there isn't a distinct chemical imbalance that they can identify. Right now, the causes of autism are, in general, not understood because they identify some rare gene changes and mutations, but the exact cause is not known yet. So, I don't want to put this out there that they could be overdiagnosing people, but just to make sure that we're all looking at this from a different lens, that there is a spectrum of autism. They are super intelligent people. The only thing that they're actually lacking is some of those ingrained social skills. And another reason why I felt like it was important to bring this up is because there's probably a lot of people going around undiagnosed. I actually thought that maybe a superior of mine was being funny because I had a situation where I interpreted certain interactions with a person in a way that I kind of catapulted their actions into the future. And it turns out that I was actually right. But when it was occurring, the superior said I might have, I might be autistic in a way. So Asperger's syndrome is a form of autism where the disabled can't differentiate facial expressions or social interactions. So if you were to smile at them, they don't know what emotion that brings up and they don't know how to respond accordingly. So people who actually grow up in impoverished neighborhoods or in bad childhoods where maybe there's some domestic violence or something going on, they have the opposite of that. They have hypersensitive facial recognition and emotional display. So sometimes if you have a tweak of the eye or if you scrunch your face, they recognize that and they identify that with certain actions and outcomes, and they'll create their own scenario from that. So that's what she thought I had, because certain interactions I had with a person made me believe they were a certain way, and they were. And so in all reality, she actually gave me somewhat of a compliment. A half-assed one, but a compliment nonetheless, because these people are, like, again, are extremely intelligent at whatever ability that they do have. They're extremely good at it. It's just finding that ability. So while she thought of it as being a moment for me to sit back and try to understand what I was going through, I actually sat back and said, hey, she said I had a superhuman ability that a lot of other people don't have. So that was the gist of that article. And then the next thing I saw, and I didn't even pull it up, but it was an article about coding and the necessity of everyone knowing coding, but not just coding, taking it further. So coding as in computer programming, but the person was like in computer science. Like I said, I don't even have the article up, but it was a director of computer science at some prestigious college that I can't name right now. So of course she was pushing the agenda of more computer science classes, but who better than to tell us the need for that than those people, because coding is actually a part of, I believe they said, high school curriculum, and this article was out of the UK, so I don't know if that's true for the US, but it is a part of some major countries' curriculum. And she was stating that that's not enough, that we actually need to work on people developing the understanding of computer science and computer communication in general, because the process of going through computer science or computer communication actually helps you with other aspects of life, like with logic and with economics and with just home organization. So basically, they were saying like you have an array, which is a list. Let's say you're packing lunch and you check off everything you've put into your lunchbox with the list of things you had in the mind. That's a similar way you would create an array and a list for computer science and computer communication. So not only is coding important, which she metaphorically exampled as being having a sheet of paper and being able to copy it, which would be coding, or learning the computer communication, which would be actually able to copy verbatim what was written and understand the processes. So those are my 2 articles you should check into for this week. So check into learning computer language, computer coding, and computer programming, as well as coding. We want to understand that our autistic friends are super intelligent. We just have to find where their skills are most useful. Our teachable moment was everything that glitters ain't gold, so be weary of whose offers you're accepting, because there will be repercussions whether you choose to acknowledge them right now or not. And if you come into a large sum of money, be weary of how much you spend, because that could come to bite you in the ass come tax time. And you should be investing that money to make sure you get the greatest return on investment. That's all I got for you this week. If you want to hear us talk about something specific next week when G Girl and Miss E. Cherie join us back in the studio, make sure to drop those questions at askthelesson@gmail.com or the lesson show at gmail.com, or you can just drop something on my Facebook. I appreciate you sitting in with me this week for my solo show. That's right. It's just, all right, catch that lighting. It's just me in here, people. And I look forward to seeing you next Monday at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. ish. All right. Good night.